Hi, today we are doing taxation of political parties. Now you should know that political parties are exempt from tax and they are exempt under section 13A. So basically, we are seeing what are the exemptions available to political parties. In this, we are also going to study electoral trust and electoral bonds. So basically today, after the session, you should know what is the tax implications or exemptions available to political parties, what is an electoral trust, and what is electoral bonds. Simple. Okay, so let's start. What is a political party? Just by calling itself a political party, does it become a political party which is exempt under Income Tax Act? No. Okay, it is a political party only and only if it is an association, body of individuals, of people, citizens in India, and it is registered with the Election Commission of India. So most important, for any organization to be a political party, it has to be registered as a political party with the Election Commission of India. Now, if it is registered with the Election Commission of India, then it is a political party. Now, political parties are liable to pay tax on their income and they are technically assessed as association of persons. What are they? For the purpose of income tax, what is this organization will be taxed as? An association of persons. But there are certain exemptions given. In which section? 13A. What are those exemptions? Those exemptions are exemptions for all incomes that they receive as voluntary contributions, like donations. If I have made a donation to a political party, that political party will not have to pay tax on my contribution, on my donation. Okay, next. Any income from other sources, income from house property, and income from capital gains are exempt. So you'll be like, what is left? Only income from business profession. But is a political party doing any business? That we will see. So basically, if you are having income from any of these three heads of income, house property, other sources, capital gains, no tax. If you are receiving contributions, donations, no tax. So these are all exempt. Okay, now what is the conditions that they have to maintain? This part you have to remember. Okay, what they have to maintain? Books of accounts. Okay, as would be enable the assessing officer, so that the assessing officer can come to a conclusion, yes, these are the incomes which they are claiming exemptions. Okay, in respect of voluntary contribution exceeding 20,000, the party needs to maintain a record of these contributions. So it cannot just say receive voluntary contributions of 50 lakhs. Every time it is more than 20,000, they have to maintain a record, who has paid it, when it has paid it, etc. Okay, the names, addresses of such contributions and the accounts of the party have to be audited by a CA. Okay, no donation of more than rupees 2,000 can come in cash. So they have to come in what form? Through a account payee check, draft, etc. Basically through a bank account or through electoral bonds. Now what is electoral bonds? We'll see. So they are saying no money can come in form of cash. One. Second, what is the thing? If it is more than 20,000, any voluntary contribution, any donation, you have to maintain a record of that. And third, you have to maintain books of accounts. Simple. Then you can claim exemption of these four things. What are the four things? House property, other sources, capital gains, and voluntary contributions. Okay. Other than that, every political party has to file its return of income. Just like you and me, we all also have to file a return of income. We have to file under 139(1). They have to file under 139(4)(b). Okay, on or before the due date of filing the return. That is, by 30th September, everyone has to file their return. Otherwise, exemption under 13A will not be given. I told you what is the exemption. You want to claim the exemption, file your return. Who is responsible to file the return? Okay, there are so many political parties in India. So many people are part of the political parties in India. Who will file the return, or who will Income Tax Authority run after? The income tax authority will run after the CEO of the political party, who is required to file the return of income. Okay. Now, this is a snapshot of whatever I just told you. Okay. Provisions related to political party, you have to learn it by heart. Same to same thing, but more in a tabular screenshot format. Take it, learn it, done. Alright. So this is what, if anything comes for 5 marks, 10 marks, this is what you're going to write. Taxation of political parties in a screenshot in front of you. Now, let's go ahead. What is electoral trust? What I told you, we are going to study political parties, we are going to study electoral trust and electoral bonds. Let's go to electoral trust. Exemption to political parties is under 13A, we just saw. This is exemption to a electoral trust. As the name suggests, it is a trust. What is a political party? It is taxed as an AOP, Association of Persons. Electoral trust. Electoral trust is a trust which is approved by CBDT, the board, okay, in accordance with the scheme of the central government. So central government will come up with a scheme and it can exempt a trust which is known as an electoral trust, and it has to be approved by the Central Board of Direct Taxes. Different from a political party, it is an electoral trust. Now, electoral trust, if it receives any contribution, it shall not be taxed. Voluntary contributions received by electoral trust is not taken into income. Okay, if such electoral trust distributes to any political party registered under 29A of the Representation of the People's Act during the said previous year, 90% of the aggregate donations received by it during the said previous year along with surplus. So, what are they saying? That the electoral trust. So, what is electoral trust? It's not a political party. It is, as the name suggests, it is a trust approved by the CBDT and the central government. They are saying all the contributions received by political trust is not going to be taxed, only if and only if 95% of the donations received by an electoral trust is given to a political party. Okay. It is distributed to any political party. Now, I don't want to associate myself with a political party. So what I'll do, I'll give it to an electoral trust. Electoral trust can then put it forward into a political party. Fair? Such electoral trust have to function in accordance with the central government. Screenshot of this, please take. What is electoral trust? Under 13B. It must be approved by the CBDT and by the central government. All contributions by the electoral trust are exempt. I have contributed, donated to electoral trust. But what it has to do? It has to put in 95% of the money that it received by voluntary contribution to any political party. And it has to function as per the rules made by the central government. Got it? Take a screenshot of this so that you know what is electoral trust. We finish political parties, electoral trust done. 5-mark question, this is your answer. Okay. Now, let's go to tax exemptions for charitable trust and institutions. Now we are going little more deeper. We are going to charitable trust. We finished political parties. We finished electoral trust. Now we are going to charitable trust and institutions. Now you must have heard of many charitable trusts. Okay, like the Tatas, Wipros of the world have charitable trust through which they do charitable activities. Lot of these temples, gurudwaras, mosques have charitable trust within them. So the money that you give to any of these religious organizations and institutions are exempt. So much money these charitable trusts get. Okay, this money that they are receiving are also exempt. So now let's go. What is a charitable trust? What are the tax exemptions available to a charitable trust? How do I set up a charitable trust? Okay, let's go. Section 3 of the Indian Trust Act. Which act? Indian Trust Act defines what a trust means. So you will not find the definition under Income Tax Act. So don't even try. It means an obligation annexed. Now you learn it by heart. Obligations annexed to the ownership of a property arising out of confidence reposed in and accepted by the owner or declared and accepted by him for the benefit of another and the owner. What is the meaning of this? You will not understand unless you understand the concept. This is a trust which is formed. Who runs the trust? A trustee runs the trust. Who puts in assets or money in the trust is a sponsor. I am the owner of the property. I put in all my property into a trust. Okay, now let's understand what they're saying, an obligation. So what the trustee has to do, let's say these are my properties. I have given it to the trust to handle. Who gives it? The sponsor gives the property to the trust. Okay. Once the sponsor gives the property to the trust, what it is exactly doing? It is giving an obligation to the trustee. Trustee is managing the trust. What obligation? Which is annexed or in relation to the ownership of the property, that listen, this house or this immovable property, whatever income is there, will go to the people I tell you. Okay, I'm telling you what needs to be done in relation to this property or this asset. A sponsor basically is the owner who gives an obligation annex which is in relation to the property arising out of confidence. I'm putting the confidence in this trustee, reposed in and accepted by the owner or declared and accepted by him for the benefit. Who's going to get benefit of this? Are the beneficiaries, for the benefit of another, that is the beneficiaries, or it could be for my benefit also, and the owner. So it is a basically, let's go again, an obligation annexed to the ownership of a property arising out of confidence that I repose. Repose means to give in and accepted by the owner. That yes, I'm giving this and I'm accepting that this person will manage the property for me, and declared and accepted by him for the benefit of another. So the trust is accepting the obligation for what? For the benefit of another. Who's the another? Beneficiary. And another can be some other person also. An organization with a constitution composed of, so the organization will have president, vice president, secretary, committee, etc. is known as an institution. The activities of the institution and its officers are regulated by the rules. So you will have so many charitable universities. Chamber of Commerce is an institution. So like a university is an institution, you will have a VP or a secretary, committee, etc. And this is all these members come together are and formed a institution. Okay. Now what is, so I'm just explaining you what are these terms. Trust we understood. Trust is basically, remember, is a sponsor. In easy words, sponsors reposes, gives, okay, an asset to a trust for the benefit of the beneficiaries. Okay. Charitable purpose. It has to be for the purpose of charity. What is charity? Charity is under 215 of the Act, which includes relief for the poor, education, yoga, relief, prevention of environment and preservation of environment, preservation of monuments, palaces, places, objects of artistic, historic advancement or any other object of general public utility not involving any activity or profit. So what is charitable purpose? Could be run by a trust or by an institution, and this is to be a purpose. It is a wide definition. It could be relief of poor, education, etc, etc, etc. Okay. White circular number this promotion of sports and games is also considered as a charitable purpose. Okay. Accordingly, an association or institution engaged in promotion of sports and games can claim exemption under section 11 even if it is not approved under section 1023. Now basically, if you are doing any such activities of general public utility not involving profit is charitable purpose. Okay. Now, what they are saying, provided the advancement of any other object shall not be charitable purpose. So, it has to be what we have stated: yoga, relief, education, etc., etc., etc. Okay, whatever is stated here in only, and this is going to the public at large. Okay, now, if over here, if I say that I want to do in pro bono is without any monetary benefit. I want to give cosmetic surgeries to all individuals who come to my trust. Is it there in a as a part of charitable purpose? No. So even though it is for general public utility, people can come and take benefit. Is it there? No. So you will not get relief, or you will not get the benefit of charitable purpose. Okay, so it has to be over there. If it is not there, any other object will not be a part of charitable purpose. If it involves carrying on activity or service in the nature of trade or commerce or business for cess or fee. So let's say if I start a law firm and I say whatever profits I get of this, I will give it to the poor. I'm taking money and I'm from the rich. All the rich clients will give me money. I will take this money, give it to the poor. Can I say I'm doing charitable purpose? No, because here what I am going to do, I'm going to run it as trade, commerce, or business for a fee. Okay, unless such activity is undertaken in the course of actually carrying on advancement of any other general public utility. For example, so this what I have said, that I'll run a law firm and take the money from there and give it to the poor, won't work. However, if I am running a cancer clinic or a cancer hospital, and for some purposes I take money even from the poor, let's say for x-ray, etc., etc., or a basic fee, it is allowed as an, you can still say it is charitable purpose, and actually in the advancement of object of general public utility. The aggregate receipts during the previous year do not exceed 20% of the total receipts. So I'm saying that 80% is free, 20% I'm taking money. Okay, basic money I'm calculating and taking. If I go for any doctor over there, they charge only 200 rupees versus it would be 1000 rupees elsewhere. So it is basically charitable purpose only. Okay, so for the rich who are coming in the for the rich who are using the same services and not under the charitable trust, it is an X amount, and there are many hospitals who run on this model. So they are saying that if it is running on a charitable purpose, only 20% you can claim, you can take over there, not more than that of the receipts for business activity, etc. Remaining 80% has to be for charitable purpose only. Okay, income not to be included in the total income. Now, what incomes will not be included, are not to be included in the total income? Let's see. Income derived from property held under trust wholly for charitable or religious purpose. So now there are these 5 points you have to remember which are not included in the total income. Let's start with the first one. Money made by a trust. So income derived from property held under the trust wholly for charitable purpose. So there is, let's say, Tata Institute, okay, or the Tata Institute, which in Mumbai is very big for cancer patients. Now this is entirely made for the benefit, entirely, the entire income is for charitable religious purpose. So the whole income is over there. In that case, money made by a trust fully dedicated to charity or religion won't be taxed if such good causes in India. They can also keep some money up to 15% for later on. So sometimes what they do, let's say the charitable organization needs to buy. We are taking example of the Tata Institute, Cancer Care Institute. Now they need a new equipment. Now this equipment costs, let's say, 100 lakhs. What they will do, every 15% they will start saving. How much can they save? Up to 15% only. And then once the amount is collected, they will purchase the entire equipment what is required. So they can save up to 15%, remaining 85% they have to invest for charitable purpose only. Income derived from property held under trust. Money, now this is partly by trust and partly they are using for profitability. Like I gave you example, there are many organizations which take money from poor for money from the rich, and for the poor is exempt. So partly they are running it as a commercial institution, partly as charitable. Money made by the partly charitable trust won't be taxed if it is used for charitable purposes, okay, up to a certain percent. So they have to use it up to 15%, that money they can collect. So remember one thing, if it is for charitable purpose, you can accumulate only 15%, 85% you have to use in that year for charitable purpose. Now what is the difference between first one and second one? First one is whole charitable purpose. Here it is only part is charitable, part is commercial. Now, income from property held under trust created on or after 1/4/1952 for a charitable purpose which tends to promote international welfare in India is interested, it shall be exempt to extent to which such income is applied for charitable purpose outside India. So what does it mean? Money used outside India by trust for global welfare, which is beneficial for India. The welfare has to be benefited to India directly, indirectly, won't be taxed. For example, if I am doing some charity outside India, okay, let's say to develop better relationships between India and another country, then in that case to develop those country ties, so who is going to in effect going to get benefit out of it? India only. In that case it will not be taxed. So what they are saying, which tends to promote international welfare in which India is interested, okay. Like again I'll give you an example. India does not have the best relations with Pakistan. I do charitable activities over there. It is not benefiting my goal of developing, promoting international welfare in which India is interested. I will not get exemption of the welfare charitable work that I do outside India. But if I do in any other country, let's say USA, or I do with any other country where India has good ties with, in that case, like Israel, India has decent good ties with Israel. If I do beneficial activities over there, I do charitable activities there, the benefit is going to be received by India. Hence, they will allow me an exemption. Income from property held under trust for charitable purposes shall be extent to which such income is applied for such purposes outside India. Now, this exemption is subject to the condition. We are talking about a trust created before 1/4/1952, before the Income Tax Act came into play. So they are saying you please go and take a approval from the CBDT. Issued a direction. So older trust spending money on charitable or religious institute outside India can get a tax benefit only if it is approved by the tax authorities. We are talking about older institutions. After income tax came, so by effect you have to take benefit. But what if an organization was there before even CBDT was into place? So they are saying you take approval and then do your activities. Simple. Income in form of voluntary contribution. So donations meant to stay in the trust main fund are tax free if saved or invested properly. So they are saying, like I have donated to a charitable trust, and I'm saying it will form a part of the corpus. Corpus is it is not to be used for charity. I'm saying corpus is something like your share capital. It will stay with the trust. So it is, if I put money for the trust, this money is fully exempt. Okay, subject to the condition that voluntary contributions are invested or deposited in one or more forms maintained specifically for such corpus. So now if it is said that you have to have certain corpus for certain trust, then you are putting the money there and the money should be used for what it is stated. Basically, if you are putting money in a corpus fund, there is no tax. Voluntary contributions. Donations are considered part of the income when calculating 15% of the tax free. Donations are considered. So what is donations? You have to calculate it for the entire amount that you have received as income. You can't say donations are not income. Donations are income, out of which 85% have to be used, 15% can be set aside. Okay, if a trust doesn't spend 85% of the income on charity for religious or charitable purpose, the unspent amount can be considered as spent in the next year for tax purposes. Okay, it will be. However, this rule is specific on the unspent amount can be treated in following year to still benefit for tax exemption. So now, for example, I have spent only 50% of my income. I should have spent 85%. 35 I have not spent. So I'm still accumulating it. I will have to pay tax. I will have to pay tax on that 35 also because I have not spent it. However, in the next year, when I spend it, I can take a benefit of that. I'll show it as charitable purpose. So, now for the purpose of determining the amount of income, the provisions of your income from business profession will apply. And it is saying that if any amount relating to 10,000 rupees is spent and no TDS is deducted, 30% will be disallowed. Okay, if a trust doesn't use its income for the intended charitable or religious purpose within a certain period for any reason, the unused income is treated as income. This means they have to pay tax because they have not spent it. So what is the rule for charitable trust? 85% should be used. If you have not used it, you have to pay tax on it. Simple. Okay. Now let's see how capital gains work. Asset when wholly for religious purpose or charitable purpose. When an asset is wholly for religious or charitable purpose and if it is transferred. So let's say there was an asset, a house, where or a building or any asset which was there for charitable purpose. And as long as it was being used for charitable purpose, there is no tax. But today I sold it. I sold it for 100 lakhs. So let's take an example. There is a house, asset, I must have purchased it for, let's say, or the value today is say 60. I sold it for 100. The capital gains. Okay, we'll assume that we purchased it within 1 year, so no indexation, just for the purpose of understanding. This will be my capital gains. They are saying as long as you invest this money for charitable purposes, no tax for you, exempt. But what if you don't invest? Let's see. Where the whole of the net consideration is utilized or you purchase a new asset. Okay, for acquiring a new capital asset so much, so then it will be exempt. In such cases, capital gains arising shall be deemed to have been applied for charitable purposes if you purchase a new asset where only part of the consideration is utilized. So this is one example. I use it, no tax. But I use, for example, a second thing. I use only 20 lakhs for the purpose of or forget 20. Let's say I use only 30 lakhs for the purpose of a new asset. Then what? Will I get exemption of 40? No, you'll say you'll get only proportionate amount. Where a part of the net consideration is utilized for acquiring a new capital asset, so much of the capital gains is equal to the amount to which the amount so utilized exceeds the cost of transfer of asset. If a trust sells something, only spends part of the money on new asset, only the part of the profit that is more than the sold item originally cost is treated as if it is used for charity. This portion won't be taxed. So let's take an example. So let's see, a charitable trust had an asset, the cost of which was 80 and it sold the same for 1 lakh. So what is the profit? 20 lakhs. The whole of the consideration 1 lakh will be exempt from capital gains if a new asset of 1 lakh is purchased. This is fair. If a trust had a capital asset costing 1 lakh and it sold the same for 1 lakh 50 and then it purchased, so how much money it received? 1 lakh 50. Basically 50 is the capital gain, but it bought a capital asset for 1 lakh 30 only. So it purchased a capital asset for 1 lakh 30 only. So let's say 1 lakh 30 it purchased. This is your capital gains. The cost of the new asset is 1 lakh 30. The cost of the old asset is 1 lakh. So this is the amount which they have utilized, capital gains utilized. They purchased the new asset of 1 lakh 30. Profit is 50. But the asset was 1 lakh. They purchased an asset of 1 lakh 30. So only 30 is utilized. Now the remaining, so I'll tell you how I do it. 1 lakh 50. 1 lakh 50 is your capital gains. Remember this. Out of this capital gains, they should have ideally put in this whole 1 lakh 50. But what did they do? They utilized, see here, 1 lakh 30 only. Asset value was 1 lakh. 30 is the value of capital gains which they utilized. Correct? But the total capital gains is 50. 30 is only utilized, unutilized is 20. This will be taxed. You have to see the value of the new asset minus the original cost. Now, got it? This is easy. What do I mean? So you have to use the entire amount. We are talking about capital gains. Okay? Assets held partly for religious or charitable purposes. It is quite possible that the capital asset is held by a trust partly for religious or charitable purposes. For example, I told you that there are many hospitals who run like this. For poor it is different. For their own patients it is different. Okay, so where such a capital asset is transferred and the whole or part of the consideration is utilized for another capital asset. For example, I'll give you a example over here. There's an X-ray machine used by charitable purpose also and non-charitable purpose also. Everyone is taking. Now they sold this X-ray machine and they purchased a new one. Okay, is utilized. The appropriate fraction of the capital gains arising from transfer shall have been deemed to be applied to the extent where the whole of the net consideration is utilized. They sold it, they purchased a new one. Okay, entire amount, the whole is very easy. I sold the X-ray for 100 lakhs. I purchased a new one for 120. So this full 100 is utilized, no tax. But see here, in any other case, so much of the appropriate fraction of the capital gains, which is equal to the amount utilized for acquiring new assets, exceeds the appropriate fraction of the cost of the transfer. For example, what does this mean? Now understand. I sold, let's take an example. Okay, a trust has a capital asset costing 2 lakhs. Half of the income is utilized for charitable purpose. Now it got sold for 3 lakh 50. Now remember one thing, we are talking about a charity, like example X-ray machine, charitable purpose, non-charitable purpose. We are concerned with this only because your exemptions are following here. Okay, so the trust is this. Now out of this, cost of the capital asset is how much? Trust costing 2 lakhs. Half of its income is utilized. It sold for 3 lakh 50. So what is your profit? 2 lakh asset sold for 3 lakh 50. 1 lakh 50. Out of this, charitable is 75. How did you get this, ma'am? 3.5 lakhs minus 2 lakhs. 1.5 lakhs. I'll spend it in the X-ray 50%. That's what they have said. If it was 40-60, you would do that way only. Okay. Now, if the trust buys another capital asset for 350, appropriate fraction of the capital gain deemed to be applied. Suppose the trust buys it for 2,90,000. Now, if it buys it for 3,50,000, this is the sale price. No problem. 3,50,000 or above is utilized, no problem. But it purchased it for 2,90,000. Now, let's see if it is for 2,90,000. That means let's divide this by 2. By 2, I want to see only how much is applicable to me. So I'll take 1.45 is applicable to me. Okay, 2.5, 2.9 is the purchase price of new asset. So I divided by 2 because it is 50-50. Okay, or you can say let me do it better so that the percentage you know. Okay, into 50%. If it was 40, you'll divide by 40. This is what is attributable to me. Okay, now 1.45 is what is attributable over here. Now from here, this is your cost of original asset. So I will subtract cost of original asset to the extent of charitable trust, 1 lakh. Cost. So you will get this is cost, this is original cost. Okay, this is cost price of new asset. So you get over here 45,000. This is what is 45,000 is cost of new asset. But they should have spent how much? Your capital gains is 75,000. So you will subtract 45,000 from here. Whatever you get is capital gains which is not utilized will be taxed in the hands of the charitable trust. Okay, now this is easy. Understand the logic. It's very simple. Whatever is the value of the asset for you'll subtract that much percentage which is applicable to the charitable purpose. Then from there, whatever is the capital gains, you find it, keep aside. What is the use of the new asset? Find that cost of the new asset and subtract it from the original cost to get the actual gain. This is the actual gain. Got it? Okay. Now accumulation of income. Question arises that I still want to accumulate income. Doesn't mean I have to keep spending. Very good. They'll give you how to accumulate the income also. Okay. Now you have permissible is 15%. Okay, but if such person is accumulated shall not be included in the total income, even if it is this, if such person furnishes a statement. So let's say I want to accumulate my income to the extent of I want to save 50%, 50% I want to spend. So they are like, listen, 85% you have to spend, but you want to go beyond that. I don't want to even spend 85, I want to spend only 50. They are saying such person who wants to save more, accumulate it more, furnishes a statement to the assessing officer for the purpose of which it is accumulated and for how much period you are going to accumulate. And in no case it should exceed 5 years. You can't keep accumulating. They are saying maximum 5 years, but you tell us the purpose. Okay, so you can do more than save more than 15% every year. Permissible is 15. More than 15, do this. Okay, you have to state the purpose and the period. The money so accumulated is invested, deposited as per subsection 5. Basically, they are telling you where to invest also. You can't keep it in a private bank or some organization. They are saying you give it to a government organization, institution. And the statement referred is furnished at least 2 months prior to the due date of filing your return. Okay. Now, it is important to note that to claim exemption, it is enough to invest in government securities. Only that part of the unspent balance which falls over and above 15%. So you don't have to invest the entire amount in government securities. If I want to save more than 15%, so let's say as I said, I want to spend 50%. So 35% is more than what is allowed. The 35% you have to invest in government securities. Okay. If the income, now see this. Section 1113 provides that if the income accumulated is applied for purposes other than charitable or religious purposes, or is ceased to be accumulated for the purpose that it was applied for, it will be chargeable to tax in that year. Okay, it ceases to remain invested in any security or deposit that is government security. Section 11.5 says government securities. It is not utilized for the purpose it is stated. Okay, during the specified period or after the expiry, it is credited or paid to any other trust, to any other institution, society, etc., 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 and it shall be deemed to be income in the year it remains to be so invested or is not utilized, as the case may be. So basically they are saying, even once you get the exemption, but if you don't use it for the purpose you were accumulating it for, then we will tax you. Okay. Now, as I said, what is this forms and modes of investment? There are a list. Always remember, these are all government securities. Government, okay, post office saving bank, deposit in any account of the scheduled bank, cooperative society bank, invest in units of UTI, central government, state government, in debentures issued on behalf of companies of the central government, investment in public sector companies. They will tell you all of this whole list. Okay. Deposits with industrial bank, investment in immovable property, and it does not include machinery even attached to permanently fastened. Basically, you have to invest in long term assets. Now, we have seen where you have, if you are going to save more than 15%, what you have to do. You have to invest in these securities. Okay, you will have a list, go through it, try and remember at least 5. Income of trust from contribution. So how are contributions treated under trust? Basically, they are nothing but your income. Any voluntary contributions are for all purposes treated as income of the trust, except if it was in the form of corpus and it is specifically directed that it will form part of the corpus of the trust. If it is a part of the corpus, then it is treated as an asset for the trust. Whereas any other contribution is nothing but should be applied. It is a contribution, it is an income of the trust, it should be applied for charitable purposes when before the end of the accounting year, or if let's say if it is given in March, then let's say I give it on 31st March, then within 3 months. Okay, following, so that the income tax exemption could be availed of. So if you want exemption of the contributions, then apply it for the charitable purpose. Now, obviously, we had seen earlier that it can be accumulated. How much can be accumulated? Maximum 15%. Okay. And where you have to keep it, there is an entire list that we saw. In that, you have to invest 15% maximum. So 85% you have to use for charitable purpose. The way of any service being medical, educational, made available by any charitable religious trust that is running a hospital, medical institution, educational institution, okay, all of that is nothing but deemed to be income. So any value of any service that is there derived from any property under trust or religious purposes during the previous year in which such services shall be chargeable to income. So basically, even if you are providing any value of any service, so I am not giving directly money, but I am providing certain services as a doctor, etc. The value of this service that is made available for charitable religious purposes shall also be recorded, okay, and it shall deem to be income. So as a teacher, I am providing free teaching over there, so it is nothing but shall deem to be income of such trust derived from the property held under trust wholly or for charitable purposes. For the purpose of this, value shall mean any benefit. What do I mean by value? Any benefit or facility granted, provided free of cost. Okay, any amount of donation received by the trust or institution in terms of this clause, that is 80G. 80G we have studied in chapter 6A, has to be utilized for the purposes other than providing. So if it is used for any other purpose other than providing relief of income for relief of earthquake or persons in 80G. So 80G we have any other charitable purposes, okay, or it is not used in the Pradhan Mantri, that is Prime Minister National Relief Fund before 2004, okay, then it will be deemed to be income. So basically, if you have certain income and it is for charitable purposes, use it for charitable purposes or put it in the PM fund, PM National Relief Fund or the Gujarat Earthquake Fund, then you can claim the exemption. So basically use it for charitable purpose or give it to the government under these two funds, then you can claim an exemption. Otherwise you will have to pay tax on that income that you have got. Now let's understand registration of trust under the income tax. So one is registration. You have to register the trust with the charitable commissioner, charity commissioner. Other than that, so that still you will not get exemption under Income Tax Act. For registration of a trust under Income Tax Act, let's see the process. So the process is under section 11 and 12. Okay, unless the following, so these are the conditions which have to be applicable. The person in receipt of the income has to make an application for registration of the trust. You just do not get a tax benefit. Okay, you don't have to pay tax, correct, on all the contributions and all the charitable expenses that you have incurred. Why? Because you have a exemption. That exemption, you have to claim that exemption, you have to have a certificate. Okay, so I have to get a certificate from the Income Tax Act, income tax authorities. To get this, I have to first make an application. Who will make an application? The application for registration of the trust in the prescribed form, etc. To whom? To the principal commissioner or commissioner, and such institution has to be registered under 12AA. Certificate is 12AA. Okay, the person in receipt of the income has made an application and it has adopted or undertaken modifications of the objects which do not conform to the condition. So basically it has to be charitable purposes only. But if it is not, earlier the objects are not that, then you have to amend the object. So basically if anything is against the conditions of registration, you have to undertake modifications, okay, and make that application to the principal commissioner or commissioner of income tax. Then they will give you a certificate. Now in how much time? We'll see the process, okay, shortly. But let's see. Now the person in receipt of the income has made an application in the form and manner for registration of the trust. Okay, so where the trust or institution is registered under 12A or under 12 within 3 months from the date on which this clause came into force. So earlier this clause was not there. Okay, now they are saying if you are already registered prior, come again. So this is not applicable as of now. So this is when the act came into force, this particular section came into force. If you are earlier registered, come again and get yourself registered. Okay, is registered under 12A within 3 months from the date on which this clause has come into force, come again to the principal commissioner. Where the trust is registered under 12AB, that is a provisional registration, and the period is about to expire, at least 6 months prior you have to come. Okay, so it is already registered, come before the expiry. Where the trust has been provisionally registered at least 6 months prior to expiry of the provisional registration or within 6 months of commencement of activities. Within 6 months, come again. Okay, where the registration of the trust or institution has become inoperative. Okay, at least 6 months prior to commencement of the assessment year from which the said registration is set to be operated. For whatever reason you had stopped operations, now again you have started operations, come again to us and take a fresh registration or apply over here. Where the trust or institution adopted or undertaken modifications of the objects which are not as required as per registration conditions within 30 days from the modification. If you have to adopt or do modifications in your objects within 30 days, come again to us. Okay, in any other case, at least 1 month prior to commencement of the previous year relevant to the assessment year from which the said registration is sought, and such trust or registration is registered under 12AB. So they are saying this is important. At least 1 month prior to the commencement of the previous year relevant to the assessment year. So let's take an example. This is my assessment year 24-25. Previous year will be 23-24. Okay, in that case you come in at least 1 month prior to the commencement of the previous year. So when you have to come 1 month prior to the commencement, so you have to come as on 1st March 2023. Okay, 1 month prior to the commencement of the previous year relevant to the registration is sought and such trust or institution is registered. So basically, come again, even if you are registered, provisional registration you have got, come again and take a fresh registration if you want to be assessed in the year 24-25 as a charitable organization. Okay, where the total income of the trust without giving effect exceeds the maximum amount which is not chargeable to income, that is 2,50,000, the accounts of the trust have to be audited. Okay, as per section 288(2). So here it talks about compulsory audit and the return of income has to be filed, duly signed and verified by the accountant setting forth. So basically the accountant who is doing the audit has to sign it. Okay, the person in receipt of the income has furnished receipt of income according to, so you have to file your return of income under section 139 4A. Okay, in accordance with provisions. So you have to do the audit and you have to also file your return of income. Okay, where an application has been made, the provisions of 11 and 12 shall apply in relation to the income of such trust or institution from the assessment year immediately following the financial year in which the application is made. Okay, so if I have made the application, it will be applicable. So let's say I made the application on 1st of March 2023. Shall apply in trust from immediately following. So it will be which year? From 1st April 2023 it will become applicable. So for the year 23-24 it will become applicable. Okay, where the registration has been granted to the trust or institutions under 12AA or under 12AB, basically these are provisional the provisions of section 11 and 12 shall apply in respect of the income. So basically, even if you have taken provisional registration, come here, get yourself registered if you want in that assessment year to be taxed as a charitable institution. Okay, now this is important. What rule 17A says provides that the application for registration shall be made in duplicate form 10A and shall be accompanied by the following documents. What documents? The trust deed, okay, the institution, the instrument, okay, with original, and where there is no instrument, then evidencing the creation of the trust or the establishment of the institution together. So for example, sometimes like you have all these religious institutions like your masjids, mandirs, gurudwaras, they might not be in the form of a trust, but they are charitable organizations. So in that case, you get something to prove, that a document evidencing the creation of the trust. Now the principal commissioner, that is your commissioner of income tax, may accept the certified copy instead of the original where the original cannot be produced. Okay, where a trust is already in existence during any year or years prior to the financial year in which the application is made, two copies of the accounts of the trust for 3 years preceding the year in which application for accounts has been made. Now understand what is this. Now there could be that there is a trust but it has not taken income tax exemption. That doesn't mean this trust is not there. This trust is there in existence. So they are saying, okay, if you are in existence, get your 3 years account statement, two copies of the accounts, and then we will decide whether we want to give you registration or not. Now what is the procedure? See here, remember for procedure 6 months. Okay, what is 6 months? I'll tell you the relevance. In terms, so this is the procedure. In terms of 12A, on receipt of an application, what will the principal commissioner do? Shall call for the documents or information from the trust or institution as he thinks necessary, whatever documents he wants. In order to satisfy himself that they are genuine, it is on the principal commissioner to ask for those documents. And once he asks for those documents, you have to provide to him. Okay, and also make such inquiries as he may think necessary. He has to either grant or decline the registration. In how much time? Within 6 months. It cannot go that okay, it is pending with the officer. Within 6 months he grants it or he denies it. Okay, if an order is passed within the said 6 months, if no order is passed, he is just sitting on it, it is deemed that the registration has been received. Okay, when the commissioner is satisfied the activities of the trust are not genuine and not carried on in accordance with the objects of the trust, the commissioner may pass an order for cancellation of the trust as well. Okay, so he has the power to even cancel. Further, where a trust or institution has been granted registration or has obtained registration at any time under 12A. So earlier, if there was a registration that was granted and subsequently it was noticed that the activities of the trust are not carried out as per the object. So it was said that it is charitable, but it is not running as a charitable organization. Then section 11 and 12 will not apply and exclude either whole or part of the income of such institution due to operations of subsection 13(1). Then the principal commissioner may by order in writing cancel the registration. So basically, if a charitable organization is doing certain activities which are not wholly charitable or the whole income cannot be charitable, it has the power to even cancel it. But only one clause is there, that if you are doing certain non-charitable activities also which is outside the purview of your objects, then the registration shall not be cancelled if the trust proves that there was reasonable cause for this activities to be carried out. Like for example, if I am running a charitable hospital and in that charitable hospital I am providing certain medical services, I am taking money for that, they have the right to cancel my registration. But if I prove that no, I am providing these charitable services only to the poor, but the ones who can afford and the ones for those people I am providing paid services, so you have a right to put forth your case, and only then the officer will cancel or keep the registration. Okay, now how to take a fresh registration, process for fresh registration. Okay, so if it has got an application, it shall, who the principal commissioner has got an application for fresh registration, where the application is made, it can pass an order in writing for registration of a trust for a period of 5 years. That this is what income tax is saying. Yes, you are a charitable trust for 5 years, your income is exempt. Where the application is made and it calls, so I have made an application, it can call for documents, information and make inquiries, the principal commissioner, to understand whether it is genuine or not. Okay, and so to understand genuineness, then the compliances, whether all compliances required under law are taken place or no, and only then, after satisfying himself, then he will pass an order for. So basically, if I go afresh, he might look and he might give me the 5-year registration. If not, he will ask for certain documents, and if he satisfies, then he will go ahead. If he is not satisfied, okay, he can reject the application and also cancel an existing registration. If he is not satisfied, he can reject an application after affording a reasonable opportunity of being heard. If he feels that he passes an order in writing provisionally registering the trust for a period of 3 years from the assessment and send a copy of such order to the trust or institution. So what is it, the 3 things he can do? He can give you the registration for 5 years. He can ask for certain information and then give you registration. He can cancel the registration. Okay, but he can cancel it as is or provide an opportunity of being heard and then cancel. Okay, he can cancel or even reject the application if you're making a fresh application. And the other thing what he has, he can give a provisional registration for 3 years, not 5 years. Okay, easy. All applications pending before the principal commissioner on which no order has been passed under this section before the date on this has come in shall be deemed to be an application under this particular section 12A. The order, this all is fine, this you can skip. Okay, the order shall be passed in such form and manner as may be prescribed before the period of 3 months, 6 months and 1 month respectively, calculated from the end of the month in which application is received. So basically, depending on which clause, under clause A, subclause 2 of clause B and C of subsection 1 shall be passed. So basically, for clause A it is 3 months, for clause B it is 6 months, clause C it is 1 month. So it is basically saying the order under clause A. Okay, so here pass an order. This is how much time in writing, if everything is fine, 3 months, 6 months and 1 month. Okay, okay, the order under clause A, subclause 2 of clause B and clause C of subsection 1 shall be passed in such form and manner as may be prescribed before the period of 3 months, 6 months, 1 month, respectively from the end of the month in which application is made. Where the registration of a trust has been granted under clause A or clause B of this section and subsequently principal commissioner is satisfied the activities of the trust or institution are not genuine. So basically, if he has given a registration, he can even cancel it. Are not genuine, he shall pass an order cancelling the registration. Okay, the registration of a trust has been granted and subsequently is noticed that the activities are being carried out in a manner that the provisional do not apply. So in that case, or the trust, the direction or decree by whatever name called, holding that non-compliance has occurred, the principal commissioner may may afford a reasonable opportunity and cancel the registration. So what are they saying? That if we have even given you a registration, we can cancel it after providing you a opportunity of being heard. Okay, now last part, levy of tax where charitable institution ceases to exist or it gets converted. They are saying that earlier you were a charitable trust, now you got merged or you got taken over or you shut your charitable operations. Possible. Now, provides for exemption of trust, all the income derived by it, okay, held under trust, subject to various conditions. The primary condition is what? that it should be applied for charitable purposes. Now, if and where such income cannot be applied during previous year, it has been accumulated in the modes prescribed and applied for the purposes that we have said. So basically they are saying that okay, if you are not applying it immediately, you can collect it 15% every year and then apply. If the accumulated income is not applied within the conditions specified, then such income is deemed to be taxable. Okay, it is fully taxable. Section 12 AA provides for registration of the trust with entitlement to be able to get the benefits. So 12 AA is the certificate. If I ask you what is 12 AA certificate, it is the exemption certificate. Okay, it also provides circumstances in which registration can be cancelled. I just explained you when there is a non-compliance, when you have not met the conditions of 11 and 12, they can even cancel your registration. So now what they are saying, it also provides for cancellation. Section 13 of the act provides for circumstances under which the exemption under 11 and 12 in respect of whole or part of the trust will not be available. So when I say section 13, you should be scared that oh my god, they are going to take away the exemption. In order to ensure that the exemption is availed, okay, what is the most important thing? It should be for charitable purpose only, your objects. You cannot do any other thing in that charitable institution. Okay, so earlier this whole section, how to deal with a trust which is not using it now for charitable purposes and it is now become commercial. So they have added this new clause. Okay, let's see what all is there. Now, the accretion of income, basically the income, collected income of the trust, accretion in income of the trust shall be taxable. Okay, if it gets converted in a form not eligible for registration under 12A, or it gets merged to an entity not having similar objects, or on non-distribution of assets, on dissolution of charitable. So you don't, once the charitable institution is shut, you can shut it, but you don't dissolve the assets, you don't distribute it for charitable purposes, or and in how much time? Within a period of 12 months from dissolution. Then, or the aggregated income shall be an amount of aggregate. What is aggregated income? It is your collected income. So it will be total assets minus liability. The method of valuation is proposed to be prescribed in rules. The asset and liability of the charitable organization which has been transferred to another charitable organization within specified time will be excluded. So now I am shutting down my charitable trust. The money that I have, that is assets less liabilities, net assets, total income, I will transfer it to another charitable organization now. Then I will still get exemption. The taxation shall be at maximum marginal rate. That is how much? More than 37-38% is your tax rate. Okay, the levy shall be in addition to any other income chargeable to tax in the hands of the entity. This tax shall be final tax for which no credit, you cannot claim any credit for this, because now you're closing it, shutting down, so no credit will be available. In case of failure of payment, what is there? Simple interest of 1% per month or part thereof. So this is basically 12% per annum. Interest is also going to be calculated. Okay, now what happens? Who is going to be liable? We are shutting the trust. Now see here, the recovery of the trust, the principal officer or the trustee and the trust shall be deemed to be the assessee in default, and the provision related to the recovery of taxes shall apply. Further, if the trust has been dissolved and to that extent people have got certain money in receipt of assets, the recipient of the asset of the trust, which is not a charitable organization, shall also be liable to be held as an assessee in default. So let's say the trust shuts down, all the money I get, I am not a charitable organization. In that case, I will be responsible to the extent of the non-payment of tax and interest. However, the recipient's liability shall be limited to the extent of the assets received. Okay, so this is your entire charitable organization. It is done, completed, over. Okay, nothing else, and we are sorted. Thank you, everyone.